if you've ever travelled in India or Sri Lanka, excluding the nice restaurants you're supposed to visit or the beaches or whatever, you're always told you should go and visit a temple. You should visit a church or something like that. And sometimes on these special occasions, you're told that this area has a temple and a church almost next to each other, and that's seen as quite novel. I'm just driving up the high street of a town. It happens to be my closest market town that has more religions in its sort of area than anywhere else in the world. It's utterly bizarre, and I've been really interested in making videos about this, but the majority of the religions that I've tried to contact haven't replied. So I've gone straight to the place I know best, the Church of England, and I've got in touch with Luke. We're about to meet him, and I want to know what on earth is behind this town. Is it just a weird focus of religiousness? Is there a spirituality that I'm not really aware of? Because this place is pretty innocuous. Let me know what you think, but please subscribe, and I'm just looking forward to this conversation. For me, it's oh no, I can't go in that one. I'm looking forward to this conversation because I've not got a clue about this place. There's been a couple of decent podcasts and various other things, but so little is given away. It's quite posh. I'll turn the camera around. It's posh and it's old. So the oldness is certainly what we're going to find. There's some beautiful buildings on the right. But yeah, I'm going to look forward to meeting Luke now. Luke, I've lived in this area about 5 miles away for 5 years almost. I've not been in here before. And the reason I've not been here before is partly because of the traffic.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Having to come from mine on a Sunday morning, the A22 is just like, you just have to sit in traffic just to get into East Grinstead.
Yes.
So I don't visit East Grinstead as much as perhaps I would do if it was another 5 miles. When I'm on my motorbike, I come here quite a lot, but in the car, not so much. But yeah, I've been here for 5 years, and when I first moved to Newchapel, I looked, just online, what's been done around East Grinstead or wherever else, and I saw this podcast. I don't know if you've listened to the podcast. It was around, I think it was made around sort of COVID time, and I've forgotten the name of it. I'll link it if people are interested. But I was very interested in the fact that this place is known for its religions. And I've wanted to sort of document some of that. I'm someone that's quite curious anyway, but I thought, why don't I just reach out to Luke? Here is the most familiar to me in my upbringing. Yes. It's what I understand, and I agree with it on the whole. Yeah. And I thought, well, the best way in is to come and have a chat with you.
That's true.
So one of the things I guess I'd like to do, and people that are watching my videos are kind of interested in this stuff too, is what's the difference between sort of the religion in this town and spirituality in this town? And I'd love to apply that as we talk around maybe what the Bible Society called the Quiet Revival, which a lot of people are disputing now already. Talk about how you sort of came to faith and come here, and then see if we can draw some sort of parallels and understanding of, is there something about this town that's representative maybe of a global understanding of searching or controlling, or maybe just for Britain? Is there, what can we learn from here, and what can I learn from here? So where should we start? Out of all of that, where do we go from?
It's I don't know. I think East Grinstead, they call it like the Twin Peaks of the UK or something like that. And occasionally you get like these newspaper articles, and I kind of like, oh, now I'm an East Grinstead person. I sort of cringe.
Which character?
You're exactly which one. But it's a place which just seems to have all kinds of, and has throughout its history had all kinds of different kind of religions, faiths, kind of fringe views as well, throughout its history. So I don't know, it's an interesting almost microcosm maybe of what goes on in the whole world. And the interesting thing between kind of spirituality and religion, sort of, whether we're saying kind of religion is kind of like more of the controlling kind of organizational thing on top of the spirituality that sort of flows in most people's lives.
Well, let's talk about that first of all. Let's create meaning. So I had a I was invited over for a takeaway by our neighbours, didn't know them very well. She is half Irish, half Lebanese, and probably approaching 60, something like that.
Yeah.
And she was talking about how she's viewed and valued some religion. And I said, we're at opposite ends of the spectrum. Okay. So from my perspective, and we had this conversation, she said, I kind of see what you mean from there. And she started warming more towards what did the texts say, rather than what's the practice of. Yeah. And I guess from my perspective, you vocalised it then. Religion for me is something that is about it's institution. It's a uniformity. It's a homogenization. Rather than a celebrating of the individual, you become part of the thing. But how do you view sort of religion versus how do you see it? Because you are as a representative
of organised religion.
And a historic, very historic building.
Exactly. I see spirituality seems to flow through humankind throughout history. I think we see it in different ways all over the place. And I think kind of religion, if it's done well, it is an organising structure that helps bring people together around those kind of spiritual kind of impulses we have. Going into kind of Christianity and their kind of structures, it's interesting to see through history where we've done it well and where we haven't done it so well. And generally when Christianity's had too much power, too much influence, too much respect, it's done it badly, right? It kind of uses that power it's gained through everyone's joint spiritual experiences to control them. And I would say that's a very bad thing. And yet, in the kind of the organisation, we do need to be organised in some ways. It is good to come together as a group. It is good to share our kind of spiritual experiences with each other. So I think religion can be a very good thing, though obviously the controlling aspect of it is not good. I remember kind of growing up in terms of like there's almost the two sides of faith. I think it's having that kind of feeling. I remember growing up as in a Christian home in Eastbourne. Well, my mum was a Christian. My dad was a bit of a skeptic, really, but I'll come to that in a sec. But my mum kind of grew up kind of like, and we would say a prayer before bed or something. And I remember a real sense of sort of even as a small child feeling like there was kind of a Jesus with me who kind of almost sat by the bed when I was going to sleep, who I would say prayers to and I would speak to like a friend. And I felt that kind of spirituality. It was my mother's spirituality that came to me.
So at what age did you say?
So I can't remember but I remember when I was kind of 5, 6, that sort of age, kind of starting to vocalise my own prayers. And then sort of feeling him there in my bedroom at night, kind of like I would just feel sort of, in the dark, in the worry and those kind of feelings, to feel that he was there. And though, as a 5-year-old, you have kind of almost imaginary stuff. So it wasn't kind of like, that wasn't kind of a life-changing thing. I just sort of like, it was there. And it wasn't really until my teenage years where I was just starting to think about like, what is truth, what is factual. And my dad was a science teacher, and he was very kind of like, and it was all about kind of like, is this true? And that was when I started to kind of wrestle with those questions as to kind of whether the things in the Bible actually happened, and having a realization, because I think as a child I was looking at them almost like a fantasy story. It was like, kind of once upon a time Jesus walked by the lake, and to talk to my dad about it, and he'd obviously wrestled with it a lot, kind of this idea that there was definitely seemed to be a Jesus. Historically, there seemed to be a lot of evidence for that. And then who is this man? And is the stuff in the Bible true? And I think my dad, I didn't know this, but my dad was going on a journey around that stuff, thinking about whether it was true. And I was going on a journey. And I just remember the two sides of it, kind of like that factual thing, but also the kind of spirituality coming together as a teenager, full of hormones and emotion as you are, and just sort of like connecting and actually believing that suddenly that this was true, which meant that Jesus who felt imaginary wasn't as imaginary as I kind of thought, and that actually he had power to kind of work in my life. Not that I was kind of the finished article at that point, But I think in terms of like what we're talking about is spirituality, I had that kind of spirituality that flowed through me when I was young. But I think kind of you need organisation to help you and to help you sort of to guide you, to show you the way, to then disciple you through life. It is sort of a powerful experience if it doesn't go wrong and control you. I remember going, I spent a year in Australia as part of my university thing. I remember arriving there kind of like I'd never been so far away from my friends and family and things, and just arriving, and it was Sunday. I was massively jet lagged. I didn't know kind of what day it was, but it was such a long flight. And just walking around the corner I don't even know what type of church it was, just walking into a church and suddenly feeling that sense that I felt in my home church of, there was this little group of people who met together once a week, and they were really just kind and nice to me, and they welcomed me straight away. And I just talked about, where I come from, and that was a real moment of me where I loved the church, I guess, as an institution, as a global institution. Though it wasn't a Church of England church, it was I don't know what, but it was there we go.
So, and I guess like when you would have your selection meeting, I was encouraged to think about it for a little while, but I never went through selection. Thankfully, perhaps. But there must be a question within there about why is it you value church, or why is it you value the institution? So how would you, if that, it's been 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So what would have been some of those questions then, and how would your response? And maybe how might your response have changed now to how you answered it then?
Yeah, kind of why do I like the Church of England?
Yeah.
I think I went through selection kind of one time and got turned down. So that was like 13, 14 years back.
Right.
So it's still quite a young man. So kind of convinced I was of faith that, quite kind of, I was evangelical and very sort of black and white on things. And I think like looking back, I was furious, and everyone was furious that I got turned down and things, but it seemed like dead cert that I would get through. But looking back, it was a real eye-opening experience. It really kind of helped me see more about who I was and how I should change. And I guess in terms of the selection, some of the things, because I was so kind of, this is true, this isn't true, I found it hard then to look at other parts of the church, which suddenly, as part of the selection conference, you are opened up to very different kind of churchmanships inside just the Church of England, and you have to sort of like wrestle with these, and you say, can I work alongside? Could I work in these churches? Yeah. I'm now in a church which is very different from the kind of church that I grew up in, and it's a great kind of blessing. As part of that, I went on. There was this wonderful scheme called the Community of St Anselm. I'm not sure if you've come across it. Justin Welby set up this community of young people inside Lambeth Palace. And he invited a group of ecumenical community called the Chemin Neuf, mainly French, but kind of a real mix, to run it. And so I went into this place, and I spent a year doing it. And half of the people were living in Lambeth Palace, and the other half were like living out. I was an accountant at that point, so I'd go there every Monday night. I'd pop in, and then we'd go away for retreats and do things like silent retreats and things like this. So I spent a whole year doing this after I got rejected, and it really opened my eyes to the different parts of the church, and just felt God speaking in very new ways. We did kind of a week in silence, and you're like, wow, okay, yeah. And I've kind of come from like this, evangelical kind of like cool guitars, and like there's so much noise. Amazing sermons, and not to knock those things, but there was something just so powerful about like going, okay, right, I'm going to just take all that stuff away. I arrived with a whole bunch of books. I love reading. And they took them away. I was like, what? What am I going to do?
They took them away?
Yeah. They said you could have a Bible, you could have a notepad. And you sat in your little kind of cell, little bedroom thing, and you do your prayers each day. You would gather together, and then you would go off, and they'd give you some work to do, picking apples, weird things like this. It's a monastery, right? But like the monks would.
Where was it?
This was Sklurda Abbey, which is down in Cornwall.
Right.
So that's where they took us away to. So we'd do our normal meetings in Lambeth Palace.
Yeah.
But it was lovely out in the countryside, go for walks and things. But in that silence, I just really met with God in a new way, and saw kind of that kind of striving, that kind of like that power thing that is in the evangelical church, where you sort of like you have the lead pastor, lead vicar, who's so kind of like eloquent and perfect in every way, and actually like being a bit broken by the whole process of being let down and the kind of like being rejected, and then kind of coming back and really reflecting on myself, and in this new way, in this silence, in this, it's called kind of Ignatian kind of spirituality. Is just a beautiful thing. And they'll just, say, go and read that Bible verse. That was their advice. You got 3 hours, and you just like read it. You'd read it again.
One
you
verse.
Get a bit bored. Well, I don't know. You'd have a little section
or
something, a story or something. Your prayer bit. You get kind of bored, you get kind of angry, you get kind of like, why have they done this to me? Why am I reading this stupid verse? It's like, and then you go around the whole cycle and come back to, and you would start to really kind of hear God's voice in a new way, and realize he's right there. He's wanting to speak to us, and yet in our activity, in our busyness, we kind of lose sight of him a lot. So yeah. Bringing that through, I then reapplied into the system, and I suddenly started to see the things about the Church of England that before really annoyed me, like the other parts of the Church of England that weren't like mine. I saw as a strength of the Church of England. Like the Church of England's on this, like, is built off this Elizabethan settlement thing, is built on compromise, is built about like different people from with very strong different viewpoints who were literally killing each other, coming together. And finding the middle way, as they call it. It's a beautiful thing. And I think it's shaped our country as well, of this kind of sense of kind of compromise, this sense of kind of reasonableness. And there's something about it in kind of like British culture in general. And it's something I really love. And it's something actually like in the day of Donald Trump and all the kind of stuff that's going on, and the disputes and kind of everywhere, that I think we really need that kind of Church of England, middle way, Anglican thing. It is, I think, particularly powerful. So then I come back into my interview and I'm like raving about the middle way, and I'm raving about the Church of England. And I was like, yeah, some people are doing like this. They're throwing incense around. Some people are playing guitars. Some people believe this. Some people believe that. But we all unite around this kind of central idea that Jesus died, he rose again, and actually we want to live our lives and follow him. And yeah, it really sort of transformed me, that kind of process. And now, kind of like, now I'm another 10 years on, it's sort of, I started off doing some really interesting work, really kind of heartbreaking work at times. It's kind of on an estate in Brixton. I spent 5 years there, and just getting to know a small community. I was sent by my church. A few of others were sent. I was on an internship. I was just basically eating into my savings month on month.
Oh, really? So it was a...
Yeah. Well, they give you a house to live, and I think they gave us like a £50 allowance or something.
Which goes nowhere.
Which goes nowhere.
Get
so
you on the train.
No, it was great. I just met my wife at that time, and I kind of turned to her. I think it was our third date, and I'm like a relatively well-paid accountant at the start, and I'd taken her out on nice meals. Took her out to a really nice restaurant. I was like, do you like nice restaurant food? No, it's fine. It's quite nice to eat at home, really. I was like, I'm glad you said that, because I'm going to take this job where I'm going to have no money. So, and it was a real blessing. She just stayed with me. But yeah, it was this, but as part of that, it was kind of like I moved into this estate, kind of, which meant I met these people. I would bump into them at the corner shop. I'd meet them everywhere I would go. It would be a real kind of in community. I didn't have massive money myself, so all of a sudden, whereas I was going off on nice holidays and doing things before, I just couldn't. So I was there, and I was in the community, and we just got to know people, and we kind of did a bit of like mission stuff in the church, and just set up like little things like after school clubs and like lunches for the old people. And it was just such a blessing, that simple thing about coming alongside people.
But that comes out of two things. So I can see what you're saying, and I've been thinking a lot about James Fowler's development faith.
Development faith, yeah.
You know that stuff.
No, I remember it. I think we looked at it at university or something.
Exactly. Yeah. And I studied it too. And I've been looking at that and thinking, where do I sit on there? Now, when I was staunch evangelical, I was a youth worker as well. Yeah. So I would be putting on those things, and because, there would be the things in my mind of whether it's Matt Redman saying for the audience of one, whether it's Bible verses as well that would encourage me, whether it was the Great Commission, and thinking, well, this is how I act as the hands and feet of Christ, and I need to do it. And there was a sense of almost a Kantian duty. What I didn't find in it, I don't think, was fulfillment. What I don't think I found in it was a sense of spiritual connection. So when you mentioned picking apples in the monastery, my friend who's a monk in Crawley Down, I was helping them pick their apples in October.
They're always picking apples.
All year round, maybe.
I hope to make cider. Quite a lot of these places make some very good ciders. So.
Yeah, it'd be great if it was, what's it called? What's the really strong one? Calvados.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it'd be great if it was that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I understood that. But when I was helping picking the apples, I was just thinking, I mean, you know, Brother Christopher's like 81. I'm just happy to get up the tree to do it for him. In my head, I'm doing it as a mate rather than as an opportunity to contemplate. Now, as I'm sort of going through this questioning stage, I got to a stage with my job in advertising where it stripped out the humanity and replaced it with money, replaced it with success or a hierarchy of, you know, I'm better than you.
Yeah.
I'm a bigger dog than you, which I've never pulled off. And then returning to a spirituality. I mean, it was 3 years, so it wasn't, thankfully, it wasn't too much of a kick in the kahunas. But as I returned to it, there's this sort of sense that actually I like being around people. I'm curious about people, and I want to see Christ in people.
Yeah.
So how? And I wonder, and I'd like to drift back into you as well, rather than just talk generally or talk sort of in broad brushstrokes. But I wonder what we're talking about here. You mentioned Trump, but the sort of I've got it right, and you come to me for the right answers. To me, typifies evangelicalism.
Yeah. I guess it does.
What are you seeing at the moment? So we talk about quiet revival, and you mentioned on the phone when we spoke about young men coming here.
Yeah.
Are they coming here because they want to pick apples, or are they coming here because they want to know if you've got the right answer? And those two on their own, one doesn't really exist without the other, right? In terms of, but. What are you seeing at the moment, and how are you identifying with it personally?
It's really interesting. It's the struggles of kind of young men and kind of masculinity and stuff, and it's I don't know. I mean, each story is slightly different, so it's hard to generalize. But just seeing people searching for something. People like sat in here, you know, we're in the church, kind of like the church is open all day, and it's I often wander through here doing something, and someone will just be sat here. Not always young men, but there seems to be a lot of young men around who live busy lives, who've got a lot on, who are kind of doing this and that, and yet they need to have space to contemplate. They're looking at those bigger questions. I think most of them have had some kind of spiritual experience in general. They don't know kind of what that is. Sometimes it's driven by, you know, one's kind of a death of a parent. You know, there's those kind of situations where something big has happened in their life and they've taken those steps. Quite a few of them are kind of young parents, so they've got small children, and they're still in their 20s, so they're grappling with kind of like these big kind of questions of life, and like how do I be a good father, and those kind of questions, and I think they come to the church, and this church particularly is like, if you want to go to a church and you live in East Grinstead and you're like, where should I go? It's basically on the top of the hill, and it's got a huge tower, and you see it. Oh, it's different. My estate church in Brixton, I remember I used to give out like flyers and things outside the door for events, literally standing outside, and they said, "Oh, I'd love to come. Where is your church?" And I'm like, "It's there," because it was just like all the other buildings. It was just a hall. Yeah. So, but here it doesn't have that thing. So I think that's why you see in this particular church a whole bunch of people who are coming. So they bring their searching. Quite a few of them. I mean, to be honest, they pop in. You see them once, twice. They disappear again. But there's been a few who have sort of stayed the course and started doing alphas and Bible studies and things like that to talk about kind of, what's going on with them. church is an amazing thing if you really think about it, in terms of like, for someone who's not experienced it, this feeling that like there's this whole community, you know, there's 120 here on Sunday morning. I remember kind of one of these guys got baptized, and he said to me, he was kind of like overwhelmed, because at the end of the service, all these people came up to him. He was like a celebrity. He was like, they're all talking to him. They're just like so happy and wanting to know about him and inviting him over to do things. And there's not many other places that you find that, particularly in terms of a multi-generational thing in society. And it is just, church, if it is done well, can be just such a blessing. You don't need to control people too much. I mean, I always try and sort of, in terms of what we're teaching and kind of like the people we're inviting, try and stay as broad as possible. Can you be kind of a place, and particularly as Church of England, I think we're called to do this. We are a town church. We're central in the town. We should be for all our parishioners. I mean, the parish system is like this beautiful thing. The idea that like the Church of England has a church for every single person, and the church is not just for the congregation members who regularly come, but for others. For your whole parish, it's your church, your place to seek spirituality. So,
and for you as a vicar or priest, that's your role too, right? It's not.
Yes.
It's not to be the housekeeper here.
No, exactly. And my most joyful things has been, you know, called out. You know, I'm going out to take communion to a lady this afternoon who's sort of nearing death, and it's you know, she's not a regular congregation member, but she's a parishioner, and you know, that they have a connection to the church. And actually, that's one of the things. If you live here and have lived here for a while, most people have come in for a funeral, for a wedding, for a something, you know, and there's something lovely about that, to have that connection to your church, and that when you get to that point, even if you haven't been to it for most of your life, you know, you will be served and loved. And that kind of funeral ministry is such an important part. It's something kind of like knocked me, kind of, as I've moved to this church. I moved to this church like a year and a half ago from kind of, and I was in churches in South London, far younger population, so we get far less funerals up there, whereas down here, it's just an older demographic in the town, so you get far more funerals. And the funeral ministry is just a very, it's quite emotional for me. It's kind of quite a powerful thing that people invite you into their families' lives at that really sensitive moment. You go in, you have a little cup of tea, and you sit on their couch, and you ask them about their dead relative. You ask them kind of about kind of how they died, about, you know, how everyone was feeling, and because I'm the vicar of the church, I'm allowed to do that, whereas like everyone else is sort of like, you know, you're a bit scared. You don't know how to do that, and it's and it's such a privilege to be able to do that and to share Christ's love with the town in that way. So.
You're definitely preaching the Church of England value to me. Because I have become quite jaded.
I do quite like it.
Yeah, you clearly do.
What
in terms of that thing though, about these new people, you said they might have had experience, but they're drawn back here. What do they leave finding? So, I mean, if you sit on a train station seat, you hope to get a train.
Yeah.
You don't just go to the station. And in some respects, to me, the church is kind of like a train station.
Yes.
It
doesn't always have trains running. That's sometimes the problem. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, the funerals is a great, segue from that.
Yeah.
But in terms of, what are you seeing? Like, maybe, what are you hearing? What you sent, like, using that language?
No. I mean, where you want, where I want people to go. I mean, I do want to, it sounds strange, but I do want to draw them in a particular direction. I want to draw them to Christ, because, that's where I found life again and again. And to draw them into kind of experiencing Him through the services, through the sacraments, through the Bible, through the Spirit. There's all these different ways and different parts of the church do it, and I try and kind of access all these things, to be honest, to use people, to help people into that kind of way of life. And I think as people do start to read the Bible, pray by themselves, have those kind of spaces. I mean, there's one chap who's just a lovely man, and he kind of like got such a busy life, works hard, got small children, all this kind of stuff, and he kind of gets in his car on the way to work, and he goes out to it. He says 10 minutes early, he just sits on the driveway and just like pulls his Bible out of the glove compartment, has a little read, has a little pray before he starts the day, and goes off. And
what a great idea.
Yeah, well, no, it's lovely, and I mean, I didn't tell him to do that. He just does it himself, and he's within the first year of faith. And he's finding kind of he's feeling transformation in his life because of that. And it's not because I've been putting my hand on his head and praying for anything in particular. It's just we've been meeting together. He's been meeting with others in the church. He's been praying, and he's finding, the way his relationships, he's thinking about new things in his relationships, about caring for people more, about kind of things like swearing less and being, less kind of talking about people behind their backs. It's these kind of like little patterns of behaviour that seem to kind of shift. And there's no fast silver bullet with spirituality. It's this life, kind of this long walk of faith, and just turning back to God in those hard times, sort of saying these prayers, and gradually learning how to walk like Him. It's kind of almost unglamorous. I kind of sometimes wish I was one of those charismatic people who can just put my hand on your head and everything's solved in your life. But like true healing is found in that long walk, that kind of experience of the practical love of the church, that regularly reading scripture, coming to know Jesus, kind of seeing new things in Him each day, and and you see people's lives really being transformed, I think.
I'm just going to keep this one going. It stops every 30 minutes, I think that's it. So, so talking about that, that side of this sort of, as you said, the relationship, it's like any relationship, right? It's not, it isn't wham bam, or the Billy Graham, going to the front and then you're done. Yeah. But there are other religions in this area. So if we kind of, let's talk about that side of things, because I think it's fascinating. So though I'm really aware of what we're talking about, and we could focus more and more in on that. Yeah. I'm still interested in East Grinstead. I think there's a unique nature about here, and actually identifying almost the aim of the other religions. Now, another thing, again, when I was evangelical, I said this on the phone, but I could never imagine anyone that was gay being in leadership in a church. I could never imagine a woman being in leadership. And then my mum became a vicar when I left working for churches. All of these things where I was quite sort of dogmatic and black and white about things. Yeah. And so I would see other religions as being, either as perhaps, the Tommy Robinson gang would be saying they're a threat, to now seeing them as being an opportunity because they're people that we can be curious in. Exactly. And so rather than saying, we're a Christian, you're not, actually, we're people. And we know someone called Jesus.
Yes.
Do you want to know him?
Oh, exactly.
So tell me a little bit about this. So, there are so many different, Scientology, and I said we had a chap lodge with us who's from a Scientology church, went to the school, grew up with him, he's 50 now. Gosh. And we've had all sorts of interesting conversations. He's moved out now. There's the Rosicrucian, there's Opus Dei, there's the Mormons just up the road from me, and we had a pair of young women from Utah or wherever they were from over for a roast dinner just to talk with them. I said, have you ever had an English roast or British roast? And they said, no, we haven't. I said, well, you should just come over. I studied theology, I worked in a church, you're not going to convert me, but if you fancy a nice dinner, we'd love to host you. Yeah. And it was really interesting listening to them. Oh, cool. And having a chat with them. Yeah. What is it about this place that seems to attract? There's the Buddhist temple, isn't there, just up the road as well? A couple of them, I don't know. and you can go into a shop and you'll hear an American accent, you know, which you don't really get in Sussex or Surrey towns, really.
No.
So what is it around here, and what is it that you're connecting with this kind of, I mean, the quiet revival is interesting, because I'd almost want to reply, there's a quiet spirituality. That, in my head, that's just the there's
well, I think people are searching, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're searching all kinds of places. And I think, you know, from a Christian minister's point of view, the positive side of this is that there's this quiet revival that people are starting to come back to church. And yet there's also this other revival, you know, kind of a dirty revival or something like that, where actually like people are going after kind of nationalism in a particular way. But I think, you know, they're probably going after all kinds of different spiritualities in other ways.
And equally, like, the people that are doing that, that's because that's perhaps closest to them. That's what they can reach most easily. There's no way that I'd poo-poo like someone who's, because they're wanting to find the same, or get on the same train, use a crap analogy, the same train.
Well, they're looking for meaning, they're looking for identity, they're looking for purpose in life. And, you know, in a time when kind of, you know, whereas we thought, you know, all the way through, you know, 90s, noughties, it's all going like this. I remember I joined my accountancy firm in 2008, and they got a bumper crop, the biggest number they'd ever recruited of us into the thing. And then basically the financial crash happened. And within like 2 years, they were like cutting posts. Kind of, I almost got made redundant. I managed to sidestep it. But it was, and ever since then, it has been sort of going downhill in many ways. And we've been so kind of, I grew up in that kind of optimism, and then to see it sort of like tailing off, and, you know, less job opportunities, people younger, you know, I'm 41, people younger than me, far less job opportunities. I managed to get out just in time, I guess, into the corporate sector, but like less job opportunities, kind of like less optimism in the world that is going to be okay. Now we're seeing kind of increases of like wars and all kinds of things. You would think naturally people are going, well, I no longer can trust the system to provide for me. Whereas, you know, further back, you're like, well, actually, you stay in your lane, you do what the government tell you, you know, the press will tell you what's going on behind closed doors. You know, I trust all these, I trust the church.
Yeah.
You know,
your doctor.
Now no one trusts the doctor. Yeah, I mean, it's the same, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Like all these institutions which we used to trust, we just don't trust anymore. And I think then, you know, I think that's gone off, and that's led people to kind of search, like, where do I find kind of like advice in life? Where do I find kind of support? And some of the good things, you know, some people are coming back to the church because of it, but people are going in all kinds of different directions, and and it makes quite a divisive kind of world in a way. Yeah. That sounds very doom and gloom.
No, but I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you see these. I mean, on Instagram, it's called doom scrolling, right?
Yeah.
The stuff you see on there now is so negative. People just seem so lost at sea.
Yes.
I've friends who are just saying, we were at friends for dinner on Saturday, and they just live up the road again, other neighbours, and they said, we just want to get out of Britain.
Yeah. Well,
it's so negative,
isn't it? Yeah.
He's lost his really well-paid job in HR in London. His husband is a baker, so he's all right, but they can't pay for their mortgage, you know, with just what he's on. Yeah. And they're like, we don't feel like it's worth being here.
But then actually a lot of countries are suffering the same thing. I mean, it seems to be quite an international problem that we're facing at the moment.
And you said it then, there's a distrust of institutions. So how is there still a trust? So I lost trust through a lot of it, you know, as we all did through COVID.
Yeah.
What do we actually listen to here? I got the jabs. I was still working and traveling on the plane, so I needed to get, you know, the first one and the second one. I didn't get the booster.
Yeah.
But I'm now still thinking, you know, I've been taking heart pressure, blood pressure stuff since I had a weird episode straight after that second dose where Abby had to take me to hospital. I had some ECG, you know, and everything else. So I'm now thinking, how do I trust the medical profession?
Yeah.
There's also this thing where, you know, I've told you I was fired a couple of times from Church of England. I'm like, how do I trust the Church of England?
Sure.
But what is it that people are sort of finding here that they're sort of, because we're seeing all these whistleblowers and which is fantastic.
Yes,
People are
it
no
is.
longer held until they're dead
Yes.
by these things that they've been told to hide, whether it
Yeah.
isn't Scientology or whether it is Mormonism
Oh,
or
yeah.
whether it is Christianity. What is it that enables people to find a home or a place here? And what is it, I mean, are the same people that might come here also going down to Ashdown Forest to go and hang out with the wicked? You know,
I'm not checking up on them all the time, but I don't know, potentially. It's interesting, isn't it? Or yeah, I mean, definitely people seem to be doing that kind of stuff.
what role do you have, I guess, as a town priest in
Yeah.
that respect?
In terms of for them,
For them,
who are
how do they see you,
searching
and how do you see your role, I guess?
Yeah, because I think kind of historically, it's an institutional role. Like, you know, I mean, I still go and stand next to the mayor at various things. The Christmas lights switch on. I was invited to give a little talk, which was, you know, it was lovely. And, you know, Remembrance Sunday, I sort of like, we take our choir and we march down the high street and meet up with everyone down there. I mean, that's sort of, it's very emotional, kind of like when you look out at the numbers, you come out for something like Remembrance and that sense of community, which is very special in a place like this. But for me, kind of like that institutional role, I think is gradually disappearing, really. I think it's sort of left in some of these places, and in particular churches still have that kind of sense, that connection with the mayor. But I think kind of less and less, kind of like that's been part of it. Because I think that's been, you know, as I've said, when church gets too much power, when church gets too much status, I think we kind of lose track of what we're supposed to be doing. We kind of, you know, just on a very basic level, we're pointing people to Jesus. We're saying, you know, like in your spiritual searching, you can look to Jesus and he can provide you the answers. You know, he's the way, the truth, and the life. Those kind of things are quite simple, and just to keep focusing back on that instead of spending a lot of time with mayors. I mean, the local mayor's a lovely man, actually, but I mean, you know, you can kind of lose track, and you can start becoming, you know, the local celebrity or something like that. I mean, what I long for this role to be is kind of, you know, be known around town, but be known for kind of the good things like the funerals, like the care that we give to those people who are in hard times, you know, the support to other people in our community, and that kind of love. And yeah, if the church can be known for that, and I personally as the vicar of St Swithun's can be known for that, I think that's a brilliant thing. I mean, we had it was the last vicar but one I invited back to preach in the summer, and it was lovely to sit and chat with him. And he'd been like vicar here for 20-something years, about 10 years ago. But a whole bunch of people turned up for it, and just chatting to them after the service and hearing about like his ministry and the way he cared for people in their hard times. And that's what I long kind of for my role to be, that kind of support. And as we look at like other religions and stuff in town and other kind of things that are going on, because there is lots of stuff going on, I don't know. We don't really have kind of like straight dialogue. I mean, I bump into, I said kind of like, I think Mormons are the only ones that kind of like you see around a little bit more, and Mormons are lovely, or the ones I've met are.
Oh yeah,
and
they are.
We've had some lovely chats, and obviously there's some things we disagree on, and yeah.
How do you, as a vicar or a priest, engage with them? So, I mean, one of the things, I don't know if I said this on the phone, but I would love to see if we could go and film with various places in their sort of buildings and just have chats with them about why they're here and what they do and what their beliefs are.
It'd be really interesting.
I don't know whether we could get access, but I just thought it'd be a really fascinating way of not to kind of do the archetypal proselytizing, but just go, what's your story?
Yes.
Because I just think like everyone's so closed.
Yeah.
Because we're worried that people don't trust institutions, so it's much easier to be closed. But when you're an institution, speak to, and I thought maybe we could. But anyway, that's what I was wondering whether we could do.
No, it's an interesting idea.
But you say that about the caring and the consistency, but equally out the front, you showed me, people were burnt on the high street. How many 400 years ago?
Yeah. Yes.
So tell me a little bit. What does that bring to this church as well? You've got there are the graves and the plaques sort of explaining what the graves and who's in there.
Yeah, I mean, it comes to a kind of an interesting history of kind of what East Grinstead is. East Grinstead is this interesting place that seems to attract fringe beliefs, whether those are Christian fringe beliefs or all kinds of Scientology, Mormonism, all kinds of different things. And I mean, some people would say, you know, it's about the ley lines. You have the meridian line that runs straight through town. We've got kind of a stone over that way, which tells you where the ley line, that meridian line is, and you know, it's in an ancient forest, and the Ashdown Forest is this ancient place, and I think it's had kind of Wiccan and all kinds of kind of druids and stuff for a long time.
And they have lots of meetings or whatever they do.
No,
all the time during
you know, I've had some conversations with people who've kind of come out of that, which is really interesting to sort of hear kind of a very different spirituality. But I mean, it still runs on the same kind of thing of that kind of, there's something more to life. There's something more, and we want to tap into it in some way.
Yeah.
But back to kind of East Grinstead. Because of, I think, more its location. It's sort of like it's been here for, I don't know, 1,000 years or something. It's a hilltop. It's kind of an obvious place to stop on the way. It had, you know, it had its inn and things like this, and it had its marketplace.
Yeah.
So it drew people from surrounding countryside, but also who are coming down from London, particularly if they were heading towards the coast.
Yeah.
And I think sort of Reformation, you had a lot of like stuff going on in Europe, which then kind of came over here, and I would guess that the kind of places people were meeting were places like East Grinstead or maybe Lewis, which also has similar kind of things in terms of people being burnt for their faith. So I mean, that comes that those people died because of a particular part in history where the country had switched under Henry VIII to kind of a more Protestant faith, and then switched back again under his daughter Queen Mary, and she'd said either repent or burn, and the Protestants who didn't repent were burnt at the stake, and 3 of them were burnt here, and I think another 11 or so were burnt down in Lewis. And yeah, it was part of kind of a national movement, but I think what they found in kind of this place was this kind of fringe belief. And it was a good place to talk about these kind of things, I would imagine. They don't think all of these people were local even here. They obviously got arrested here. So I presume that this is kind of a meeting place for them to meet with people. But actually, as you then think about it kind of more, as the like nonconformist movement came kind of in the 18th century, where kind of people were breaking away from the Church of England, again, this area kind of had an early kind of Baptist place, had early Quaker kind of places, because of its natural kind of a little bit outside of London, a little bit away from the authorities, out in the countryside, not too far away, so you can still draw in people and money and things. And yeah, so it's always had this history of that kind of thing. Well, one of the interesting histories is kind of outside of church history, which is after the Second World War. Did I tell you about that on the phone? No.
Yeah.
It's a really important part of our town. We are the town who did not stare. It sounds like a strange title, right? But after the Second World War, or towards the end, a surgeon called McAdoo. He came here, and he pioneered plastic surgery, and our hospital here still specialises in plastic surgery to this day. So, but he pioneered a whole bunch of plastic surgery for RAF pilots who were terribly disfigured after getting burnt during the war when their planes came down, and it meant you had a whole group of former RAF pilots who were living here, but they had plastic surgery, but it was very early plastic surgery, so it was their faces were horribly disfigured, and the town had this kind of motto that we were the town who did not stare, in terms of in a positive way, that we welcomed these people. We didn't stare at their deformities, and we welcomed them into our community, and that they had services here and in the church, and that there was a big connection. So it was an important part of the town's history that they would welcome the outsiders who other people maybe thought was a bit weird. I'm not sure if that kind of like leans into maybe then, you know, I can't remember when like Scientologists turned up, maybe the 60s, something like that. But, you know, and these different groups started turning up, and whether actually we were more welcoming because of that kind of history, which seems so important in our kind of heritage as a town. Yeah, so which is a lovely thing. I've been trying to think about these kind of stories, these old stories, to think about like what our identity is as we think about like as a church, what's our vision, and can we be kind of a church who did not stare, or who welcome people regardless of who they are. And,
or what's happened to them.
Or what's happened to them. And can we be that church and taking on that town's identity and bringing it as an important part of who we are now? Because it seems to be an important part of who the town is. In a positive way. It's good.
That's really good.
Oh, yeah, no,
I'm trying to think how we... I mean, to be honest, that could be a good end.
Yeah.
Please like and subscribe. I don't know. Let's see if there is anything else we can talk about. But no, that's a really good ending. I mean, my obvious question, if we were going to continue, would be, what does the next? So you've been here a year and a half. These sort of positions are generally like a decade, aren't they? Or 5 years, or
hopefully, yeah.
Is that right?
Well, yeah.
What's the aim?
7 years at least.
Oh, 7, okay.
I mean, you don't get forced to move. I could sit here for 15, 20 years. But, like the previous vicar.
Yeah.
In a church like this, there's so much to do, so many interesting things.
Yeah.
An amazing community. And actually, I think it takes 5 years to really get like embedded in a community for people to know you, to trust you.
Yeah.
I wander around. Dog collars are weird. I'm like, I've grown up.
You didn't go to a church where
I didn't go to a church where it had like things like dog collars and things. People would just normal shirts, and it would just be very kind of like chill. And it almost feels restrictive. And I don't really like kind of like the institutional thing really, because it's like I'm using my institution, and a lot of people have got preconceived ideas when they see a dog collar. Yeah. And yet, as I've got into this role, I found the power in it, because I'll go and take my laptop into a coffee shop in town and do a bit of work, and I bump into someone, and then someone who doesn't know me will come up, oh, you the vicar of the church? And, you have these wonderful conversations, and, I don't know. So I want to embed in this community, get to know people, and, it's nice. I've got 2 small children, so I'm getting to know people at the school, getting to know people in the town. It's lovely. And and as I gradually get to know, I want to open up this church. They did an amazing thing. They put in some glass doors over there, so you can actually like look in. They used to have like 2 sets of huge oak doors where you're like, what's going on in there?
Which look lovely, but they're not. Yeah,
exactly. But and that was before my time. They did that, but we're thinking about how can we kind of do things inside the church which can welcome others. There's a lovely guy locally who does he has a company called Cine Stock who do those open air cinemas.
Oh yeah.
And he came to me a couple of years ago, and he said, I'd love Christmas time. I obviously can't do open air cinemas. How do you feel about doing it in the church?
Yeah.
And we did some like Christmas movies. So,
cool. Did you?
So this year we had like Love Actually, and we had like Muppets Christmas Carol and all those kind of things. And it was just so lovely. And he got like a few of the food vans outside as well. But it was amazing to see, because it was right in our busy season, but we managed to find a few days that would work. So we had like all of our carol service, so we had all these people coming in for that stuff, but then a completely different demographic of mainly local families, small children, a few people coming out for date nights, and I love that idea that the church is like that place that it can be kind of a safe place for you to come, and people can build that idea that church is a safe place. I guess that's one thing we haven't really talked about, kind of the safeguarding stuff around church, because church being a safe place is so important. And when we talk about kind of the bad side of religion, I think it's when people are holding power over people, and people have to be quiet and things like that. It is one of the things we've really been trying hard in this church to create a culture where people can talk about stuff, can whistleblow, can share, sort of about 3 times, 4 times a year, I'll stand up at the front of church and say, if there's anything you want to share, please do come to this person, this person, this person. And we put posters up all over the place. And it's just becoming more and more important in terms of what we're doing. And not just as a like ticking the box exercise, which is what I think I found it was 20, 25 years ago, whenever it was when I started doing like youth ministry and stuff.
Same time as me.
We're laughing about like side hugs or something. That was the main advice you took away from this.
Because we trusted ourselves, so we trusted everyone else.
Exactly. And that was part of it. And that's the thing, as I've got into ministry, and as like when I was working on this estate, I just didn't even kind of realise what I would be flying into in terms of this kind of like all the safeguarding issues that just float under the surface. All these things, sort of domestic abuse, child abuse, kind of like stuff inside the church, stuff outside the church, things you got drawn into. And because of that position of the kind of responsibility, and as you showed that you were willing to be open, and that we had an effective process, and explaining that process, and explaining, you can come to me, but also if you want to go to someone separate, the diocese have got these people who you can phone up, here's their numbers, and trying to do these things. But all of a sudden these different stories start coming up, of some historic, some quite current, and it made me a bit sad for a while, to be honest. I mean, you suddenly saw kind of like what really goes on in a lot of people's lives, and sort of the sadness and the brokenness there is. Which is why then, as I've sort of like gone through the last 10 years, kind of more and more thinking about like church, kind of like one of the essential aims of church is to be a safe place for particularly the vulnerable, children, kind of like particularly vulnerable adults, but everyone really.
The people that were burnt on a plane, or the people that were hurt at home.
Exactly, and that's all part of what kind of church should be. And that's hard sometimes, because you're opening yourself as a leader up to kind of like other people coming in and saying you're doing something wrong, and that kind of thing. You have to be very kind of vulnerable as a leader to then allow people to feel safe to come to you. And it's just interesting.
It's a lot of weight on you, though. So this is where I'm still. So everything you've described, I'm thinking, great. Luke, I'm totally with you. No. The trouble is. So I was told a story where the person that married my wife and I had multiple affairs, a vicar. Yeah. He had, I don't know, a bit of downtime, and he's been reinstalled somewhere, and nothing was dealt with. And the fallout. The reason I bring it up is I heard a story of someone else just recently that was part of the mix that I had no idea about. Oh. And with you, I'm like, I totally agree. And when I was a youth worker, I'm like, I've got to trust myself here. Yeah. But it's the checks and balances of safeguarding that actually is the complete and utter failure of the C of E at the moment. No, because when you get a dodgy scumbag, they can still work it for themselves.
And they don't seem to be able to sort it out at that kind of higher level.
No. So you're right. Speak to these people in the diocese if you've got a problem. Yeah. I mean, bless you for saying that, but yes, you have to say that. Yeah. But if someone's really manipulating their power, others with their power, even saying that doesn't get through. No, it doesn't. And I think you can almost say that, and in certain churches, the way someone acts as a leader will mean that people won't feel they should do that. No, I can't. No. I can't go over the vicar's head and go and speak to the diocese and cause problems for him, because they don't have the humility to allow others to do that. And some of it comes down to that sort of institutional kind of problem, and back to kind of like that picture of what is a vicar. The vicar is this person next to the mayor is such
chair, aren't I? Standing next to the mayor, and
I can't see the chair.
You can't see the chair.
I'll tilt.
The chair's very grand.
Here you go. I'm tilting down.
Nice furniture here.
It is a lovely piece of furniture.
Yeah, it is a lovely piece of furniture, but it kind of makes me feel kind of grand, not just in a normal plastic chair or something. No. But yeah, I could be. Yeah, I think people get caught up in that and having this kind of power, and they madly try and hold on to it. Yeah. And the Church of England has to work out how it does, how it handles its staff, and how it can kind of retain a little bit more power to stop these things, to take people out of these roles and not reinstate them when they've done things which they then haven't gone through the right processes.
Maybe we need like an eBay seller version of vicars.
Yes.
Luke, 5 stars.
Rate them.
Yeah, that's right. No, he was a bit dodgy. Don't know how he got to this church. Yeah. 1 star.
It always terrifies me. I hate looking on like the Google reviews because you have them of like churches. Yeah. Like you have your location. Yeah. People type things. I'm like,
I just
don't really want to look at it. I just try and stay away from that kind of stuff.
I couldn't hear the reader.
Yeah, no, and that is the most common kind of complaints I get. So you can't hear them or something. But yeah, I'm just so in terms of I mean, in the safeguarding thing, I do think they're going in the right direction, too slowly. But they are moving in the right direction. Those people in the diocese, I do really trust, and they are bringing more and more things which are kind of looking in on parishes that are kind of like exerting more power. So, like if we weren't doing the right things, after a while you'd be flagged as kind of like a bit of a,
like
the
an
dodgy
Ofsted.
parish.
Like an
well,
Ofsted.
a bit like an Ofsted, yeah.
Yeah.
We've got kind of lots of check boxes, and then the diocese on top of that, like they're being checked as well. So they had like an Ofsted recently,
Yeah.
and did relatively well in it, because the Diocese of Chichester historically
In
has
the
been
80s.
awful in the 80s, and all this kind of stuff. So many like horrendous abuse cases came out. So I think they threw a huge amount of money in.
And the chap killed himself that was abused by
Yes.
Bishop Bull.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, but it's not just Bishop Bull.
No.
There's like all these others, because I think you have people like Bishop Bull in senior positions, and that sort of like almost enables other people, and kind of like, because if that general culture is kind of like out of kilter,
people have said it
terrible.
before, but it seems to be, a lot of those things seem to be wrapped around this kind of shared living discipleship programs. But I know anyway.
Yeah.
The last thing maybe then we speak about is this kind of, there's a disconnect still between online and social media and IRL church.
Yes.
There's a lot of people making these sort of videos, having opinions that seem to garner lots and lots of things, and yet it's as if we didn't have the same conversation in the church. Where are you sort of bringing those things together? And no, I don't mean like on you're going to be the next vicar hunk.
Vicar of Romford or whatever his
Yeah,
name
Jordan.
is. He's brilliant.
He is great.
Really funny stuff.
Yeah. But what a great conversation I had with him.
Yeah,
for him
no,
just to say,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and he's a really sweet bloke. But how do we? Yeah, those sort of guys that come in and talk about, why they're here. Do you have a conversation with them about what are they looking at online, and is some of that coming? Is that coming
I
through?
mean, I think that's sort of further down the line in terms of their discipleship. But it's so important. And how does it form young minds in terms of what they're looking at,
like the Jordan
what their
Peterson and the
content.
rhetoric and
and I mean, and there's far more dangerous ones than Jordan Peterson, aren't there? I mean, the Tate brothers and stuff,
saying they're
and it's
Christians.
and like Charlie Kirk's killing, that was really kind of pivotal moment, it seemed. I'd never heard of him until he died, and then I started looking at his videos online, and
then you get served. That's all you get served,
and then
right,
you
on
get
YouTube.
it all,
and then you just get
really
all of them.
interesting.
Yeah.
But there was a whole bunch of guys in the church. I've had 2 quite long conversations about Charlie Kirk with different guys who comes to the church, and people you wouldn't expect, actually slightly older guys, but it's like but still that they get it through, and there was something kind of hopeful in the way he speaks about kind of Christianity. It's so definitive, and it's like this is obvious, and we spent this entire conversation kind of thinking about the complexities of that kind of stuff, and it's like
hang on one second, I'll just start this again. Okay. There's a button. Yeah. I mean, Charlie Kirk's kind of conviction was so convincing.
Yeah, and I mean, I think he obviously did have a faith, and he had kind of a strength of opinion, and a whole bunch of the conclusions we would have gone, whoa, I'm not sure about. We agree with that, but the sense he definitely had a faith in Christ, and and some of that is actually quite powerful for people, though then that draws them into other beliefs where you would think, well, maybe that's not as damaging, which is why I think it's so important that, though online stuff can be really helpful to break through into people's homes who wouldn't normally kind of hear about kind of the message of Christ and things, but having kind of a loving community around you of multiple people of multiple ages to kind of like, you just kind of talk these things through, and you share about these things, and you share about your life, and you see the example of like these elderly saints who've been, in this church you've got people who've been here for like 70 years and all this kind of stuff, and it's just inspiring, and that's what I would long to do in terms of kind of people who are kind of caught on social media, because I think more and more kind of younger generations kind of social stuff is going through social media. There's less kind of getting out and about and spending time with even your mates and stuff, and that's dangerous. And
and there was something I heard. Well, actually, it's in one of the videos when I was talking with Father Robert Thompson. He was saying that the bishops are no longer able to hold that kind of power because of the democratization of social media.
Yeah.
If something happens, it just goes. Poof. They can't
Yes.
control the narrative.
No, exactly.
And so I'm wondering, even with safeguarding, everything
Yeah.
you vocalised then was, I was like, yeah, great, totally, I'm with you, I'm supportive. And yet the management of that more widely is missing the mark each time. And in the same way of this sort of information and the communication, the stuff around the new Archbishop and her kind of complacency or support potentially.
Before she's even got kind of officially made up.
Yeah, too right. And so, but they're continuing in the old vein, which is if we stay quiet,
Yes.
it will all go away and we can crack on as we wanted to.
Yeah.
In the same way with the Soul Survivor, so many of us have been hurt.
Yes.
I personally experienced hurt, quite a sort of significant level, but nothing like some of the people I've spoken with.
No, exactly.
And the damage that what became an institution is now being supported by 3 million quid in the first however many years, and then 5 million quid following that.
Yeah.
Using the name and the brand because it's seen as a success rather than something that perpetrated something quite dysfunctional.
No,
It's bizarre because there's not this kind of. So I guess I'm preaching at you in some ways, but there seems to. I'm really interested here because there's a history that's bonkers. People have been burnt for their beliefs outside. It's led by a vicar who was happy picking apples and knew how to spend a day doing that.
Yeah.
And yet there are people that sit on their. All of us will gain a heck of a lot from looking at our phones and other people's opinions.
Yeah.
And then what's the connection there? I'm kind of interested in that.
Yeah. No.
And my question, I guess, as I started, it's what then within this context is this church? Is East Grinstead? Is it a religious place, or is it a spiritual place? Do you see what I mean?
Way to get to the end, isn't it? I think it's both. I think it's a very spiritual place. But I would argue, I think the whole world's a spiritual place. And I think here we seem to have a whole bunch of religions who seek to harness that and probably control a little bit in the way they do so. But the world is a spiritual place. We have that side which actually kind of the secular kind of age we live in seems to kind of suppress. And I think, it just kind of jumps out of us in some ways that we're not just kind of, like just body, we're something more.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you see. Is that what you?
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please like and subscribe. Thanks, Luke.